All right, welcome everybody to the Messengers podcast. I am Chris Searles. With me today is Rob Seifert, the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only.
Thanks for having me.
Creative director here at Searles Graphics. Today we are talking about photography and I guess fairly specifically photography in your marketing. And really kind of the difference between do-it-yourself photography and hiring a professional. Maybe some of the times when it's good, it's fine, it's okay to do it yourself, and almost even a better option to do it yourself versus when you really need to kind of hunker down and pay a professional to get it done the right way. So Rob is one of our native local photographers here at Searles Graphics, so maybe I will let you kind of intro the topic from your standpoint and what you see.
Sure. I mean, from where I stand, I deal with a lot of print and some web-based photography. As far as the print products go, I think it's essential for most companies to have a clear representation of their services using photography, the best photography they can. And it's a struggle. It's a bit of a struggle normally when jobs come in, to get the best quality. I don't think, many of our clients value it as much as we do in terms of the design. And they'll send in photos that they feel are appropriate, but for our commercial print piece, I feel that there's a little more effort that needs to go into it. As you mentioned, taking it yourself can work for a print piece, but the person taking the picture really needs to understand a little bit about photography in order to do it. I mean, I'll walk clients through the best way to do it, tell them, how to square up images on their phone and shoot from different angles, and that the subject is important. And really, most importantly, is the image resolution if we're going to print a piece. So there's some basic understanding of photography. I mean, the phone is certainly capable of taking a good image now, high quality. It's just a matter of training the user to take the best photo they can.
Yeah, I think there tends to be a kind of a belief, and we see it a lot, where we'll get images. Some people send us pictures, and we look at them, and there's a lot of issues, whether it's lighting or focus, or a lot of things, or even just things in the image where they say, well, we don't want that in there, and had they set the photo up the right way, the picture up the right way, it could have not been in there. But there tends to be a belief that it's just, well, I'm going to send it to you, can't you just fix it in Photoshop?
Right.
And that's kind of a prevailing kind of thought process, I guess, that we see a lot. And there are some things you can fix in Photoshop, you can do a lot in post, but there are some things that can't, or that are far more expensive to fix in post than it would have been to just take the picture the right way the first time.
Yeah, right. Understanding that from the beginning makes it simpler and easier to deal with it. I mean, there is post-production work that we can do to improve it. I mean, you can do a lot in Photoshop, but the raw image that you shoot and use is, that's the basis for what you're, working with. And clutter in it, like you mentioned, or things in the scene that shouldn't be there kind of detract from it. Even if you can fix it in Photoshop, it should be clearer.
Yeah, I think you touched on a bunch of points that I think are one of the primary differences between a photographer, a real photographer, somebody that's been doing, that has experience and really knows what they're doing, and an amateur with a nice camera. Framing, how you actually frame a shot and frame a subject, and
Right.
and what angle are you going to take it from, and all that stuff is kind of a big deal, and can really affect the outcome and the final product. And that's stuff that you get from a professional that a lot of amateurs just don't really. I know when I first started just kind of playing around with photography and trying to take some pictures myself, I had a nice camera, and it was kind of like, oh, this will be great, we'll get some nice pictures. And then I would look at the stuff that I did and look at stuff like that you did, and it's night and day, because it's just, you kind of look at it and you go, oh yeah, I didn't even think to, take it from this angle, or do that, or set that setting on my camera, or
Yeah.
all those kinds of things.
Sure, yeah. No, there's a style to it, and there's an advantage to hiring a pro. Definitely. I mean, your end product is going to be better. And it depends again on the usage. I mean, that's kind of what we started talking about before. If you're shooting something and it's for, a blog, or, a social media post, something like that.
Some social media posts.
Right.
Yeah.
Depending on subject, or, what you're trying to express through that, that it probably would work better for those aspects. But on a high-end print piece where you're doing a brochure,
Yeah.
that's when you consider hiring a professional to take the shots.
Yeah, and if you're sinking money into the final product,
Sure.
right? There's no reason to skimp on the ingredients to that product, right? I mean, that's like, making a gourmet meal with
Frozen
grade C.
vegetables.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's you wouldn't do that. You're
Right.
going to buy the best ingredients, because that's what's going to
Right.
what's going to make the best product in the
Yeah.
end. And it's interesting. We were talking to James, who sits back there all the time. You're waving to me, not to anybody else. James, who does our photography and produces our audio and does all that stuff here for us, is a photographer. He does it a lot himself, and he kind of made an interesting point when we started talking about this, which was, I was asking his opinion on what he thought. He was a little camera shy, didn't want to get in front of the camera, but like he said, like a wedding photographer, where I thought it was an interesting point, where he said, if you want to just get a camera and take pictures, you'll have pictures of a wedding, but you're not necessarily going to have wedding photography, wedding pictures.
Right.
One of the real interesting points that he touched on is something that I know that I do, which is, when I take a picture, I have to look at it, in a viewfinder or on my phone, or whatever, to see what it looks like, and to know what I captured, and kind of get a feel for how it looked when I did that. When you look at somebody who knows what they're doing, they know what it's going to look like. Their lighting is on point. They know exactly how to light it and where it should be shot from, and and without needing to look through that viewfinder, they know what it's going to look like and how it's going to come out. So they can sit there and just keep shooting, and they'll get 10 shots in the span of time that I'd get one.
Right.
And I thought that was kind of an interesting point to talk about.
As a photographer, I can tell you there's a feeling to it when you're shooting, and you take a lot of pictures. Now with digital photography, you shoot away. I mean, you're shooting a lot. But if you're shooting a portrait or a scene, or a landscape scene or something like that, and you capture a moment, it's like it, just because of the way it's framed up and the way that you see it in the lens, and it's going to be a winner. And those are the moments that you search for as a professional photographer, and that's what you want to provide your clients with too when you're hired to do it.
Yeah, and I know, from my standpoint, kind of learning a little bit about what it takes on that side. Lighting is huge. I never really understood what it takes to really kind of properly light a shot and a shoot. And, we've done a little more of that. I've done a lot of research on it, as we've kind of improved our photography studio here and videography studio. And, so I've done plenty of research kind of now to try to educate myself and get to that point. But certainly when I was just me kind of out with a camera, I never had any idea how complicated that stuff could be, and really kind of made that mistake of, well, it's a good camera, or this cell phone has a great camera on it and it's got good software on it, so it'll fix it, it'll take care of it.
Right.
And there are some things you just can't fix, and
post production is really a big part of it in any case, whether I'm shooting or clients providing images. I do a lot of work in Photoshop. I have my own method of post-production with my personal photography, and I try to use that to an extent, and maybe some other modifications. So when I'm working on clients' work, to kind of personalize it depending on the subject and the topic, that we're trying to express. But yeah, lighting is huge. I always try to shoot early in the morning or later in the evening, typically outdoors. And like you said, studio lighting can be a bit tricky too.
Yeah.
But shooting on your own, you just kind of, again, if you could just follow some basic guidelines, in terms of lighting, and understand it when you're shooting with a phone, it would help you learn how to shoot your own pictures better too.
Yeah, and from like the studio lighting standpoint too, we were talking about it a little before from how it correlates with post production, but you can see how putting the time in up front to do it the right way, to light it the right way, to frame the picture the right way, can save a lot of time in the long run in post production.
Sure.
In just not worrying about, well, this shadow that's here, that's not going to look well on this e-com website, and whatever the usage of those photos is. There's a lot of stuff that you can do ahead of time that's going to cost you a little bit of money ahead of time to save a lot of money in the long run, as far as cleaning those pictures up and dealing with them after the fact too.
Right. Yeah. No. That's it's important, the preparation and planning for it. I do a lot of photography outdoors, and weather is all important to me. In terms of portrait or landscape photography, architectural photography. We've worked here with a lot of clients that we shoot architectural or construction photography for, and that's that's it. I'm checking the weather before I head out to do anything, and there's just general guidelines that people can use. Overcast isn't typically bad. You don't want a completely bright sunny day unless
Right.
you're going in the later or early portions of the day. So
Yeah,
just knowing that.
I remember the first time that somebody explained that to me, and then kind of showed me the difference. And I always thought, well, no, it's bright sunshine. This is awesome. We're gonna get the best pictures ever.
Right.
And then you kind of realize that's actually not really true. An overcast day can actually be a lot better depending on what you're shooting and how you're shooting it. And
Sure.
I remember that being a bit of a surprise and a bit of a shock too.
Right.
But yeah, I think kind of the biggest takeaway, the most important takeaway is know what the purpose is going to be. It's great. One of the things we see a lot when it comes time to actually produce a marketing piece, whether it's something on your website or your entire website, or some piece of print material, is a lack of photography. So it can't hurt. Everybody's got a phone these days that takes good pictures, and if you don't, then invest in one, because you can at least get stuff that will be usable, at least in certain circumstances, or you might get lucky and get some really good shots. But take the pictures.
Sure.
Do it and take the pictures. A lot of times we see, we do a lot of work in the landscaping industry. That
Right.
you touched on, construction and home building and remodels and stuff like that. And one of the places we like to focus in terms of how we market those services are before and after shots, because they really kind of tell
Sure.
the story of to a prospect of, hey, this is what yours looks like right now. This is what it could look like, and it's a really great visual and a visual way and visual approach to kind of sell that service.
Right.
But we can't do that if you don't have the pictures. So it's great if you can think ahead of time and you can hire a photographer to come in, before you start working, maybe
Sure.
in the middle, and then when you're done. But if you haven't done that and you haven't thought ahead of time, make sure you take the shots yourself, and then
Right.
try to use whatever you can. But I think that's an important part too, is just take the pictures. Like you were saying,
Yeah.
it's digital now. I mean, storage is
Huge
extremely cheap. So
Yeah.
take as many as you can, and we'll sort through them later.
Right. Well, a huge part of it that you're saying, the usage of the photos. I mean, if you're building a website, you got to consider the pages and what you want to represent on the website. I always, people tend to send photos of their finished service or product, but they don't take photos of the process.
Right.
And I think that's huge. If you're a landscape company, like you said, get some photos of your guys out there installing a tree, doing an installation, the equipment you use. I mean, it tells so much more of the story.
Right.
And we don't tend to get a lot of that, from
Yeah,
clients.
and
They just want to show finished product, but the process is important.
Yeah, and the before is important, right? Because to visualize, a lot of times you can take that really nice finished product photo, but for somebody just take landscape photography, right, as an example.
Sure.
For somebody whose landscape looks nothing like that, and kind of looks where it's not even close, you look at one of those finished photos, and sometimes it's hard to visualize that could be what your home looks like.
Right.
And when you can kind of show, hey, look, this is what this one looked like before we did this. So yeah, yours can look like this too. It just takes a little effort and a little, a nice design and a plan, and we got to put the work in. But yeah, it could look like that too, because this is what this one looked like before.
Sure.
And again, I think that a lot of that comes down to not even just hiring a professional photographer, but professional marketing firm to kind of advise on what the usage is going to be and how you're going to use it, and what's going to resonate with the people that you're trying to reach.
Sure.